They're not tuning in to hear these differences from us, but they are tuning into the Sales Slap podcast. Which
most of our views come afterwards.
The Sales Slap podcast, where we hit you with the hard truths, bold strategies, and expert insights you need to master the art of selling. And who's leading the charge? Meet your hosts, Rick Denley, Simon Hares, and Scott Donald. Get ready for real talk, expert advice, and game-changing strategies. Because in sales, you don't just play, you slap. Let's dive in.
Diving in, we are here today with a big change right away. This is not about your hosts, Scott, Simon, and Rick. This is about a gentleman who's been on our show before and coming back today, and he's put a twist on it with us. Dean, welcome back to the show.
Welcome,
what do we
Dean.
got for today, buddy?
It's great to be here, guys. I'm thrilled to be here for what hopes to be a lot of fun in this next 30 minutes.
And why is it going to be fun? What's different, Dean?
What did you demand for a change in order to get you on?
We're going to turn the tables, boys. We're going to turn the table. You guys have been asking questions to all these sales leaders and sales professionals for the past year and a half. So I thought we'd turn the tables and ask you guys the questions. And Simon's not here. I don't think he was scared, but I think he was on holiday. But,
bloody hell! Who says I'm not
There he is.
here?
There he is. Rick is so proud of this.
Version of Simon. So.
I have thoroughly enjoyed your podcast, and last week you had Mark Hunter on, who was one of the leaders in the sales industry, and as are you two guys. I mean, this is great, and I thought, what a great way this week to ask the questions to you both and get your feedback on certain things. And Rick, maybe I'll just jump right in and ask you that first question, if you don't mind. I mean, and both of you guys, if you're a new sales representative or maybe even a seasoned professional, what recommendations would you give to those people in the first 30 days? What do you have to accomplish in the first 90 days?
Wow, that is a good question. So we'll start at the beginning as a new sales rep, but I love this question. I'm going to say focus on learning your customers, yes, your product as well, and your process. Learn all these things in the first 30 days. Build those good habits of prospecting, discipline, utilizing the CRM correctly. That's really important as well. And continuous curiosity, all built around that first 30, 60, 90 days. Come 90 days, then you're going to make a shift to full execution. Then you'll be looking at and expected by your sales leaders for pipeline growth, relationship building, and some measurable results following that first 90 days. Dean, that's what I think that sales reps should be focusing on. And when as a sales leader, that's what I used to recommend to start with too. I wasn't looking for huge results in the first 30, 60, 90 days. Learn the other things, build that foundation of knowledge, then go after the sales.
Great advice. Scott, what about you? What do you think?
I think Rick is completely wrong, and I take a different slant. No, I'm
what else is new?
I think I agree with what a lot of Rick said, and I'm just going to be adding some color commentary. I think most organizations do a really good job of focusing on product and service training, and the piece that they're missing is anything that I want to call it more sales training. So, right, working on the soft skills, working on the sales process, as we say here in Canada. I think there's often an assumption that if you teach your sales representatives about your product or service and the company, and then you send them out, they're ready. And I would argue, and I think, Dean, you kind of hinted at this, there's a lot of other things there, right? Do they have a sales methodology? Rick and I love to talk about sports, and do they have their X's and O's so they know what to do in different situations? Do they know who the ideal customer is? Do they know how to ask really good questions? And Rick talked about curiosity. What are the common objections that they're faced with? So those are the things that should really be a heavy part of it. The one thing I might add, and Rick is exactly right, when you get into the 60 and 90, they're going to be doing more external. And I think one of the best external things and I've seen some organizations do this really well, is spend time with some of your seasoned reps, some of your successful reps, and just learn what they're doing. Watch them and mentor them, start going on ride-alongs, and learn from some of the other people, the best practice of the company, right?
I think that's a great idea. And I add to something that, that first 30 days, we all have that panic attack too, because we got numbers to hit, we got calls to make, and we're not.
Yeah.
How do you handle that panic attack if somebody's in your organization? What do you do?
Yeah, I like
with that panic.
Well, I think, I think that I think, and Rick knows this as well as anybody, is that I think if you want to help reps feel comfortable and create that environment for them to learn, is that you say to them, listen, this is what's going to happen. Communicate. Here's your first 30 days. Here's your first 60. Here's your first 90. We're going to be investing a lot of time and energy into you and supporting you and mentoring you. And you're not going to have those numbers, not those KPIs. We realize that we're investing in you, and this is going to take something that's, come on. We know that 6 to 12 months for a B2B rep to really start doing anything that's going to contribute to the bottom line.
Yeah, I like that, Scott. Let's take away that anxiety that they have starting off. If we can remember back to when we first started in sales, and I know it's a long way back, guys. Okay, believe me, I know, way back there. But
Black and white.
Scott, what you said was great. Clear communication to them as a sales leader that says to them, look, let's relax here. Set clear expectations that they buy into. Set a few little goals on the learning side, not the sales numbers and growth side, so that they can tick some boxes in the first 30, 60, 90 days, feel confident, and then move on from there. That's the type of leadership we're looking for.
I have an idea. What do you guys think about the idea of saying, hey, new reps, you need to sit down and watch every episode of the Sales Lab podcast before you do anything?
Right? I think that's your best start right there.
That's not a bad idea. A lot of great advice that the folks that you've had on, some great advice there. But let's say you've got that manager, though, who's not like that. And we've been there. You've all worked for different people, good managers, good leaders, and weak leaders. Suppose you have somebody who's really demanding and in your face all the time. And every Friday, you got to deliver the numbers. How do you handle a situation where this gets overbearing? Scott, we'll toss it out to you in this one.
Well, I would typically ask for a meeting, and in that meeting, I would pull the jersey over their head and start throwing uppercuts. No, that was for Rick. So first of all, I think this is a great question because this is a really tough one, right? Because a lot of new reps, especially if they're younger, aren't going to have a lot of confidence. Mm-hmm. And what I wrote in my notes here is to ask for a meeting and have that discussion, right? What we tend to do as human beings, especially as new reps or younger new reps, is we avoid those situations, and then it kind of festers, and then we start getting angry, and it affects our, then we're talking about being anxious again. Maybe we're bringing that home and talking to our families about it, and none of it's good. And I likened it to the idea of the benefits of losing early in a sales process, right? So I would say that you go and talk to the manager and say, listen, I'm uncomfortable with this in terms of some of the demands. Let's talk this through, because you want to find out. I think for a lot of reps, you want to figure out if this is a good fit for you as well, right? So this is kind of like maybe late in the game qualifying because you're already in there. Start having to say, listen, this is how I'd like to work, and these are some things I'm uncomfortable with. Let's talk this through. And hopefully that then triggers some awareness from the manager to say, yeah, you know what, maybe I haven't been handling this as well as I could. Or the manager will say, this is how I work. If you don't like it, well, then unfortunately, that may be your signal that you probably should look for a better environment to work in.
Rick, what do you think of my thought on this? Also, there's a point where, you got to do everything that Scott said. You got to communicate. You got to ask the question. Is there a point where you just got to say, I got to find a different opportunity? You don't just leave. You never recommend just leaving.
Is
there a point where you got to say it's not healthy and just move on? What do you think?
It is a challenge, and that's a good point. When is that move on point? And a lot of us are brought up so that we don't quit, because quitting is bad. But I think what it comes down to is, the leaders that you're working for have to be able to build that trust with you. And you have to be able to trust them as well enough to come back and say, time out a minute here. As Scott said, I'm not comfortable with this environment, but I would say give an option. Come back with an option. Managing up is a big challenge.
This is good.
Something that I coach all the time. But come back with an option and say, look, I know what you're looking for in this area. I'm more comfortable right now being successful and accelerating in these areas. Does that work for the first 30 days? And then shift over into this mode as well. And everybody has a certain capacity. And I don't like reps taking on too much too early and doing a lousy job on everything. Right. Let's shorten it up a little bit. So come back to that manager and say, look, if we can cut down that list a bit and I can go after these things, I'm comfortable with that to start with. That'll build my confidence, and then we'll move on from there. It's only 30 or 60, 90 days. I would say managing up is a challenge. Come back with an alternative. I always used to like when staff members would come back to me and say, well, what if I do it this way and try this?
Yeah.
And I knew it was because they were more comfortable with that. And I hope that's the type of culture and environment that I created, because that's what I'd want to work in as well.
Yeah, I think that's excellent guidance, and it's a two-way street. And managing up takes time to learn. You don't learn that as a brand new sales representative. It takes time to learn and develop. You can get intimidated by those early managers. So switching gears a little bit, we wouldn't have a discussion if we weren't talking about AI, right, guys? And so Rick, how do sales leaders, how do they do this? How should they be working with their teams and implementing AI tools within the organization and in the day-to-day work that they have? Rick, you want to take that one on?
Yeah, I do. I think it's a great question right now, especially from the leadership aspect as well, because there's a lot of pressure on leaders right now to implement AI. Implement AI. What are you doing with AI? Let's slow down a minute here. First thing to remember is that AI should be amplifying human skills.
Yep.
Not replacing it. Amplify human skills, not replace them. So we're not replacing people with this here. Leaders should start small. Let's automate some admin type tasks, okay, within the sales process, the outreach, even some qualifying potentially. Use AI for insights and coaching. Okay, that's going to help the reps spend more time selling, which is where we should be coaching them as well. AI doesn't replace leadership coaching. The goal is to help these reps become smarter, make smarter decisions, okay? Not create more KPIs on dashboards. So let's slow it down a little bit, implement AI for admin type tasks, and stay with the coaching of selling. That's what I'd say on the AI front.
Great quote there. AI does not replace leadership and coaching. Bingo, right there. At the end of the day, it's people across the table or across the Zoom call working one-on-one. Emotional intelligence, which is what I see as the most important thing of being a sales representative, is being able to understand, listen, learn, and view what the buyer needs and what the buyer wants. And which then can lead to the question of, as you're leading with AI and managing with AI, and what is the difference between a leader and a manager in your mind?
Okay, thanks. Let me roll with this one. And I know Scott will want to jump in and add to it as well. Listen, leaders and managers. Leaders inspire belief and assist personal growth. Leaders inspire belief and assist in personal growth. A manager tends to ask, did you hit your number? Where are you at with that opportunity? Have you sold that yet? Whereas a leader loves to ask, what's getting in your way and how can I remove it? You hire good people so that they can run fast. A lot of times leadership is simply removing the barriers so that they can run faster and give them a little guidance as they go. That's why I believe leaders inspire, whereas managers tend to manage.
Could you hire me? I love that.
Thank you.
That's, inspiring, coaching, guidance. That's what good leaders do. Scott, what else do you have to add on that?
Well, I don't really want to follow Rick on this one, but I think there's two things that I'd mentioned. One, the spelling of the two words is completely different. Leadership starts with an L, but I think managers is really more of a title. It's more of the position. I'm the director of this or the VP of that. I think by adding to what Rick said, I think the leader can inspire and positively influence people without a title. And we've all worked in organizations where there are people that maybe didn't have a fancy title, but we saw them as someone that we would follow into battle, so to speak. And I think the way Rick described it is perfect, right?
Yeah, that's a great point, Scott. Yeah. And then which then goes to the point of, you're working with leaders, you're working with managers, and which goes to what's your biggest pet peeve in the organizations you've worked with when working up within an organization? Do you have a pet peeve there, Scott?
This is the one that I came up with the most bullet points.
Well, bing, hit them.
Well, I think I want to be really careful here, because I think part of the challenge that we run into when it talks about, managers and organizations, I think organizations have an opportunity to do a better job of promoting and supporting people who get put in those positions. So I think so I'll just preface this by saying oftentimes leaders get put into positions of leadership within a sales organization because they were good salespeople, which doesn't mean that they're good leaders. And then if you exacerbate that by most leaders in any role don't tend to get a lot of support, training, and coaching afterwards, we put them in a bit of I'm going to nerd out here, put them in a Kobayashi Maru. It's a no-win scenario. So I think because they're not properly equipped, they're focusing on KPIs and activity over doing the coaching that's so really important here. And the coaching kind of gets to the human part of it, right? Don't manage to a dashboard, don't manage to KPIs, manage to the behaviors and activities that you want to see. I think what ends up happening too, because of that, a lot of times managers expect the reps to sell the way they did. And whether that was a year ago or 20 years ago, right? That's not going to be very successful. And, the last point that I put here, because I didn't want to ramble too long, is I think, I'll go to a sports analogy. You can't necessarily tell a goal scorer to score more goals or ask a goalie to make more saves. In fact, you should never ask a goalie to make more saves. It's always the defenseman's fault or the winger that left the zone too early.
Yeah, coming from a goalie.
Yeah.
Said by a guy who's got a goalie's picture right behind him right now.
Exactly. See, hey, goalies are people too. But my last point I was going to make is that I think there's a tendency to be very much results focused, although kind of backing up and saying what were the activities and the behaviors that led to those results. So again, this is where the coaching on the skills and mentoring really come into play.
Nice. Hey, and I just want to throw this in, Dean. Here's one of our viewers right now who's also been on the show, who has his own show, Paul Caffrey. Paul, thanks for tuning in today.
Hey, Paul.
Great.
Did you see what Paul says here? Rick is looking more fit than usual, but doesn't say anything about Scott looking effervescent or well moisturized or anything like that. So thanks, Paul.
We had a little incident with the word moist up here in Canada for a while. I won't go into that. But
let's move on, boys.
Thank you, Scott. Oh, Dean's taking control. I love it. Here we go.
Scott, I really like your point about don't manage to a dashboard, but I fall into that trap. I love numbers. I love, I'm going back to the days before CRMs and all of that stuff. So I had the colored markers on my wall of where my numbers were and so forth. But you can get so wrapped up into the dashboard and so wrapped up into the KPIs that you're forgetting about what the job is. So I think that's an excellent point. So we've all been in sales for a number of years. What are there things that you think that every salesperson that could work on? I mean, is there one, if you're doing your next presentation, you're going to your next corporation that you're speaking to, what are those key skills you think we all should be working on?
Let me share one, if I can, from, like you mentioned, Mark Hunter on our show just before, because it was such a good one. And to me, it was asking in-depth questions. And that leads to good listening. So asking questions and listening are huge. Mark Hunter was saying, are we asking good questions of our clients? Like, what are your KPIs that you're trying to hit? I'd never heard that question before. And I thought, wow, that's really good. So you're helping them in a different area. And that's making you more unique as a salesperson. And then he carried on to say, you should be talking to your customers. And asking them questions. And I went, kind of mind blown on that one. You want to talk to my customers? Yeah, let's go in collaboratively and ask those deep probing questions. And then let's use these things with this thing in ratio and listen twice as much as we talk. And I thought that was such a good skill to continually be working on.
Scott, what would you add to that?
Well, again, Rick stole my thunder on this, but I think this is the important thing is that I think. So what's cool about this, is that there's already been a couple of instances, Dean, where you've asked a question and Rick goes first, and I'm thinking, well, that's what I was going to say. So I think
sure.
Part of what I would say here is that we're talking about some fundamentals, one of the things that I'm really leaning into as I gain more experience and work with more organizations and follow people like you and Mark Hunter and others is, and this goes to the AI piece, you can't run before you can walk. I mean, you guys were just talking about grandkids, right? So this notion of sales organizations need to work on those fundamentals and get those right before they can start building on it. And AI is a perfect example. And the point that I would add to AI before I circle back to this is if you're using AI to scale your activities, but your activities are less than proficient, then you're scaling crap at that point, right? So you're just throwing more crap against the wall, hoping it sticks. So back to what Rick was saying, the first two things I wrote down when I read your question here was listening and curiosity. And I think what ends up happening is that the third point is the sales process. So what is your game plan, your X's and O's? It feels to me, and Dean, I want to ask you, I want to flip it back to you. It feels to me like a lot of organizations want to rush to the presentation or the demo or the proposal. And it's those early stages in the sales process, there's that word again, that involve a lot of the listening, and a lot of curiosity. I love it when I see a team do this. They'll ask a question and the customer will respond. They go, oh, well, that's interesting. Tell me more about that. Who else does that impact, and how often does this happen? And what are the implications when this happened, and who was impacted? Like pulling
that's
that
going
thread
deeper, isn't it? Yeah.
I think that and I'm echoing what Rick said. The listening is super important. So instead of listening to respond, but listening to understand, and then I think curiosity is a sales superpower, and I think it's the one thing that as a leader and as a salesperson we can really lean into more. Is that, and I think that's particularly important in the early part of the sales process, and that's the third thing that I would suggest. In addition to listening and curiosity, is make sure that you have a sales process, a sales methodology, the stages and the X's and O's, and constantly work at how do we get better at identifying who our ideal customer is? How do we get better at doing presentations? How do we get better at all of those pieces? And I think that for me, if I'm a salesperson, I'm going to figure out how can I enhance my listing skills? How can I become even more curious about how I can help my customer? And how do I make continuous improvement to my sales process?
I don't think that's a change since the very first sales call was made thousands of years ago, is the fundamentals that you guys have both talked about. I'm a big preacher of the importance of planning and preparation, doing research. I think that's the most important part of the sales process are those early stages. So I'm agreeing. And the best salespeople are the best listeners. And that's been a complaint for thousands of years also by buyers. And, we got 8 minutes to go, and I want to get through a couple of more questions. I think they're important. And,
Dean, you could take all day. I'm having a lot of fun here, getting a lot out of this.
There's no hard stop. There's no hard stop.
Brilliant.
I got another 50 questions for you guys. No.
Bring them on. Let's go.
One you wouldn't expect when we talk about sales is the importance of numbers and finance. And how important do you think that salespeople have a basic understanding of the numbers part of our business, the basics of finance? Is that important?
Rick Scooter, you go first on this one. Now I put you on the spot and you can't
No, because the thing is, I want to fight there to be a smart ass here. And saying salespeople don't need to understand, margins or finance. But I think this is going to go back to the basics and the fundamentals. And, I feel like in my early days, I'm thinking about my times in telecom, where, you're trying to close a deal and it's a bigger deal. So it's kind of got to go through the finance folks. And I'm thinking about my buddy Quinn Wong in Calgary. Hey, Quinn, I know you're watching this because you got nothing better to do. But it's funny because those things can be very adversarial. And by working with somebody in that position who can explain to you the nuances of why this is so important, it reinforced for me that it's not simply just about making the sale. There is that margin piece. There is understanding, gross margins and EBITDA, and this doesn't have to be deep, but it is not simply just about making the sale, because there's implications, because there's other people that touch that sale, and it impacts, especially in a smaller company. It's super important that you understand the impact of trying to make a sale for the sake of making a sale. So I think there's a if salespeople are just looking at the customer as making the sale and not thinking about the implications of the person who has to support the customer or the effects of the bottom line in a small company, it's super important.
Yeah. I'll add to that, Scott, if I can. You don't need to be an accountant here. And that's why I loved when I went up through the ranks and basically aspired to a position even beyond what I like doing in companies. I had accountants and I had, and I had CFOs, thank goodness. But as a salesperson, you need to know some critical things. And, we're looking at, say, ROI and margins. And more importantly, Scott, you tapped on this as well. How does your solution impact the customer's bottom line? It comes down to money. I'm sorry, at the end of the day, money is money. And if you go up the food chain in selling, you're going to also have to be speaking money. And that entrepreneur, business owner is going to be thinking about the bottom line. So it's how you sell value, not price. Value should bring your client money. So you got to know the basics of ROI and margins.
So here's a quick question then, just building on that. Do you think that, again, this is a broader question, so maybe you guys a quick yes or no. Should there be a component of margin built into a salesperson's compensation?
Okay, first off, you weren't asked the questions today, so I think you're taking that away. Dean, you can slap him.
That's right.
Because you weren't supposed to. And well, I don't think it should be that tied so closely to it. There should be an element of understanding marginal sales within the sales element, but I never liked too much. And I certainly never had my salespeople be accounts receivable either.
Right.
100%.
I get it. There is a bit of a border there that
there are different lines there. And I think one of the great lessons I learned early in my career was the finance department used to drive me nuts, I thought, because they were looking at every sale, what the profit margin was. And then I realized if I got the finance department on my side, they were my biggest supporters. And you both touched on that. And I think
that's a great example. One quick one on that, Dean.
Wait. Oh, wait, you can do it, but I can't.
I'm not asking a question. I'm answering. I'm building, adding value. It's called value stacking. That's a new lesson for you viewers as well. So now I almost forgot what I wanted to say. Align. As a salesperson, I learned something very good, which you just kind of tapped on here, Dean. Align your financial people with their financial people.
Yeah.
It works out so good. And then step out of it and let the financial money people talk, because they know their own languages and they want to work it out too. And I stepped out of it, and it shows more depth to your organization than just a salesperson being the single point of contact.
That's a great point too.
I think we'll all agree when we first got into sales, there were so many silos in the organizations that we worked with. There was marketing, there was sales, there was finance, operations, distribution. In this day and age, if we're all not working together in our organizations, each of those departments, there's going to be a problem. So did I freeze here, or are we moving?
Your voice is good. Keep rolling. You're good.
Your voice is good. Your voice is good, and your voice is good. But yeah, your picture froze a little bit.
Okay, that's all right. So good point. Let's go to the next question here. We'll go for you guys. With one of the things we face as salespeople, certainly remote salespeople, is we could be on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. How do you manage that? Emails, phones, texts, video calls? Do you just say I'm off duty at Friday at 3 o'clock, or are you working 7 days a week?
You know, again, I thought about this one. So I'm going to say I'm a bit of a hypocrite here, because often when I coach people, I coach them to, have a hard stop time, and we don't need to be as responsive as we are. I think one of the things that I've tried to do first of all, Rick and I were talking about this before you came on, about how, we might do stuff in the evening or on weekends as solo consultants, but we'll also, he went and visited his grandson yesterday, and I try to go for a motorcycle ride once a week in an afternoon. Right. Yeah. So I think people have to figure out their own work-life balance. But I would add, I think this is really important, is that we set a dangerous precedent. If we want to be responsive, but every single email and text we get isn't a five alarm fire that we have to stop everything we're doing and respond to. And I think we need to manage our time, that if I'm doing professional development on Tuesdays from 11 till 12, don't respond to emails. If I'm doing skill building with my team on Thursdays from 1 to 3, then you don't drop everything for every single email and text you get.
Yeah, I would agree. And it's interesting because when I was learning more and more about people, when I was leading and wanting to grow people, I learned that we all have these 3 zones. We have a green, orange, and red zone. And those are our energy zones. And everybody's are different. You'll say, well, somebody's a morning person, and they might be. Somebody might be a night person. Here I was on a Saturday because Scott said to me, hey, you're going to send out the link so we can get on the StreamYard tomorrow for the podcast. I'm like, oh yeah, geez, I have to do that. Then I went back and looked. I sent it out Saturday. So I did send it. Problem is, I forgot that I sent it.
And so did I.
The fact of the matter is, everybody works at different times as well. And I really like that. So I think that that's being respectful to the people that you're coaching and leading, as well as your clients. Yeah, get back to them in a timely fashion. However, don't expect things outside of the realm. Everybody has lives now. And we're learning, especially post-COVID, I hate to bring it up, but we're learning that life is short and we have to live it as well. And everything's not going to change in a second. One quick scenario is that I have adult kids, and you're always a parent. And I know that they would always be texting me and so on. And if I didn't get back to them immediately, they'd be like, hey, well, you didn't get back to me. I said, sorry, I was on my podcast this morning. What's up? And they said, oh, it's okay. I fixed it. I looked after it. So when you're coaching people as well, give them a bit of bandwidth. Sometimes they'll figure it out themselves.
That's a great point.
That's great advice. And I've got 2 quickie questions to finish up here. One, you guys have been in sales. I've been in sales our entire careers. What if you weren't doing this? What was the career choice besides being a goalie for the Oilers.
Stop.
What profession would you guys be in? Rick, had to show us the way here.
Oh, geez, for me, alternative career paths. For me, Dean, it would definitely be in coaching. And I'm not doing any specific sports coaching right now, but I had the opportunity to coach up and coming athletes. And I love it because it keeps me sharp and I feel like I'm giving back. My whole purpose since leaving the corporate world about 6 years ago was to help people be their very best. And whether that's in sales, whether that's in leadership, even just personally, that's really what I'm looking into. So some form of coaching, especially in the athletics world, is what I really enjoy. To my credit a little bit, I've got women in the WPL now, as well as the Olympic teams that I coached, had the honor of coaching, and a couple in the NHL as well. So definitely some sort of sports coaching for me.
It's great to hear. Scott, how about you?
You know what? This is a really, really good question. It's something I had never thought of. And I think, like Rick said, maybe something sports related. I love sports and I love dogs, so either sports or animals. But the thing that I wrote here is that I also love working with people. So I think anything that involves working with people would be something I would be, or I'd be a professional karaoke singer.
Okay.
That's my other option. Yeah.
Professional karaoke singer. Wow.
Yeah, I've got two go-to songs. It's either Careless Whisper by Wham or Killing in the Name of by Rage Against the Machine. Those are sort of two that are right in my wheelhouse vocally.
Wow, it's two different genres as well.
Yeah, I'm pretty diverse that way.
Guys, I'm going to close out for a second. I'm going to close out and come back.
Okay, you do that, and I'm going to run something while you do that. We'll bring you right back in to wrap things up, Dean.
Perfect.
Thank you. All right, just you and me here, Scooter. Just technology as usual. So let's have some fun here for a minute, and we'll dive into this.
And now the moment you've all been waiting for. It's time for Ricky's recap. Take it away, Ricky.
Ricky, take it away, Ricky.
Take it away, Ricky. I don't know why I decided to have somebody with an English accent on.
I'm
that.
not sure why either.
Maybe that was just for Simon or something, potentially.
Probably, yeah, so he felt at home.
All right. So, Dean, you're back, which is great. But hang on a minute, because I'm just going to do a quick Ricky's recap here for us.
This is the best part of the show, right?
And you know what? Well, it is that part of the show. And I just want to make this really, really simple for me. And I'm going to show this. This is a bit of what I heard today in a simple quote. Sales changes. Tools change. Markets always changing. But the reps and leaders who win are the ones who stay curious, stay resilient, and keep growing through that change. That's my recap for today. Dean, back to you.
I think that's a great guidance that you've just summarized our message for today. There's always going to be change. When I first got into sales, we didn't have computers. We didn't have iPhones. Yeah. And so we talk about AI changing the industry forever. Well, in 10 years, 5 years, it's going to be something else. So you have to adapt. You have to be resilient and have tenacity and keep moving forwards. Sales isn't easy, but sales can be a lot of fun. And you guys are great examples. Again, the guests that you have on can teach us a lot. You're not going to learn it all at once, but for the people who listen, you guys have really done a terrific job of providing that guidance to all your viewers.
Thank you. I like Scott's advice to new and up-and-coming salespeopeople. Go back and watch every episode of the Sales Slap podcast.
Well, and I'm gonna flip it back to Dean for a second here. That I think there's the themes that we've had today are about being human and forming those connections, and also being curious. And I'm going to say that you are, to me, one of the best role models for being a good human. And the fact that you suggested asking us questions shows that you're also interested in hearing what other people have to say. So thank you for being such a great guy and a great mentor.
That's very nice of you to say. I'm going to say one thing about Simon also. Where I started with Simon going back a few years ago was I saw a post of his on LinkedIn where he did the walk through his garden with his books. And
everyone talks about that.
I'm big on networking, and I just reached out. I said, Simon, this is unbelievable what you're doing. And he walked through the garden, talk about his books. This guy promotes everybody's book. He is the best. And Simon, so thank you for what you do. And go back to the garden one day and show us those books again.
Yeah, do that. And we miss Simon, so let's get on it. Thanks, Dean. Appreciate you.
Can I do this?
Reinvent Yourself. Great book.
Let's do it. Thanks, Dean. Dean, where can people reach out to you?
I was going to grab your book.
LinkedIn. You go to Dean Karrel at LinkedIn. That's where you'll find me. I post regularly, and you can watch my courses on LinkedIn Learning. And again, guys, thank you both so much, very much. Appreciate it.
Go out and buy Dean's book. Connect with him as well. And Scott, who have we got coming up on the next Sales Slap campaign here, buddy?
Next Sales Slap, and I'm going to grab this book, is that we have a Canadian gentleman who's going to be on the show who wrote the book called Focused.
Mm-hmm.
So he's going to be on our show next Friday.
Yeah,
Steve Rosen from Ontario, from your neck of the woods.
There you go. Looking forward to it. Dean, thanks again for being here. Everybody, all the viewers that are on the Sales Slap podcast, thanks so much. Have a great weekend.
For attending the Sales Slap podcast, feel free to reach out to your hosts, Rick, Simon, and Scott, and our guests from this episode for more information. We look forward to seeing you next time.
Thanks, everyone. We're out.